A Jewish story. This week's story from the Holocaust is taken from the book My Name is Selma, the remarkable memoir of a Jewish resistance fighter and Ravensbruck survivor, written by Selma van der Peer. The Passageway of Death, Ravensbruck. The day after the atrocities, we were put on a train. That was when I wrote a letter on toilet paper to my friend Griet and pushed it through a gap in the wall of the cattle wagon. I hoped someone would find it and send it on. I addressed her as Gretchen to try to be as inconspicuous as possible, and explained we were probably being transported to Ravensbruck or Sachsenhausen. The journey took 3 long, exhausting days. Our destination turned out to be Ravensbruck. As we got off the train, we were met by SS officers bearing whips and dogs, wearing the same uniforms as their masters. In the Ravensbruck Memorial Museum Guide, you can read reports written by other prisoners who arrived there. Anna Stiegler describes how women who arrived in February 1940 were met by female guards with bloodhounds. Famished after the long journey and shivering from the cold, some people weren't able to march properly. They were shoved into the snow and intimidated by the dogs, she writes. Elena Casimir, who arrived in November 1944, describes how the dogs were wearing exactly the same coats as their masters, military grey with an SS pin badge. Coming from Vught, we weren't used to the SS men with their whips and sticks hitting us, pushing us. There was so much screaming and crying, but I didn't break down. Most of my group showed great self-control despite the fear and uncertainty we felt. We walked towards the camp with as much dignity as possible. Keeping our heads up was another act of defiance, and we knew that if we cried or screamed, there would be trouble. We didn't want to be struck if we could help it. Ravensbruck was the only camp exclusively for women. Most inmates were political prisoners from France, Poland, Norway, Czechoslovakia, Belgium and the Netherlands, or German dissidents. Only 15 to 20% of the women were Jewish. Of course, I was there as a political prisoner, not as a Jew. Nothing in Vught could have prepared me for Ravensbruck. There hadn't been many guards back there, and most of them had been Dutch. Some of them had treated us unkindly, but that was nothing compared with how we were treated now. Looking back on my time in Vught, it seemed like a holiday resort. We had food, showers, towels, and proper toilets. I only realized how comfortable it had been, relatively speaking, when I arrived in Ravensbruck. I was pleased I wasn't there alone. There were women I knew from the resistance, such as Wil Westerwil, and from Camp Vught, such as Stia Bosseveen, Gusta Elleveld, and Ada van der Bosch. The only thing we could find comfort in was one another's company. Ravensbruck is an isolated location in northeast Germany, but easily accessible from Berlin. The first prisoners arrived on May the 18th, 1939. In total, 132,000 women and children were imprisoned there, of whom probably about 92,000 died as a result of hunger, disease, and executions. The cruelty was unimaginable. In the early years of the camp's operation, newborn babies were taken from their mothers and drowned, or thrown into confined spaces to die. Many children were buried alive, poisoned, or strangled, and hundreds of little girls were sterilized. Other children were forced to work, which usually killed them. Later, some newborn babies were allowed to live, but most still died as a result of the conditions. As they became increasingly crowded, more than 1,500 people ended up living in barracks designed to house 250, with 3 or 4 to a bed. Thousands had to sleep on the ground without even a blanket. Barbaric medical experiments were carried out on prisoners, and numerous women were sterilized. Outside the Ravensbruck complex was a youth camp called Uckermark, which was originally built as a detention camp for asocial girls and young women from Germany and Austria. The Nazis later used it as an extermination camp for women who were ill, no longer able to work, or over the age of 52. More than 5,000 women were murdered there. Women who had been given the death penalty were shot dead in the passageways between buildings, given lethal injections, or gassed in special buses that served as mobile gas chambers. In 1943, the Nazis built a crematorium in Ravensbruck, and in autumn 1944, they built a gas chamber there. Please pass on this story.